Workers dug a 2-mile or 3-kilometer tunnel below the floor of Lake Michigan, and that farther end of the tunnel became our new drinking water intake pipe. And after 3 years, that worked really well, until it didn't, because we were dumping so much waste into the river that it was creeping closer and closer to that farther intake pipe. At this point, I feel like we should have given up on Chesborough, but no, Chicago decides to give him one more shot, and his plan this time is to reverse the flow of the Chicago River, taking our clean water from the lake and sending our dirty water down towards the Mississippi and St. Louis. The idea was, if you replace that canal we talked about earlier with a much bigger one, digging deeper would force gravity to pull water in the opposite direction. It was a huge earth-moving project. The excavated earth was about 13 times the size of the Great Pyramid in Egypt. And after 8 years, when they finally blasted through the last dam with dynamite, our river did start to flow in the opposite direction. St. Louis wasn't too happy with us, though. But really, they got the last laugh because they take our water and bottle it up and sell it back to us as Budweiser. But in all seriousness, actually, as the water travels, it becomes diluted, and it's at least as good as the water they started out with by the time it reaches them. This does all beg the question, why didn't we just clean up our river? Today, there are several systems in place to make sure that our water is clean because the government passed the Clean Water Act in the 70s. We have a deep tunnel system that houses and treats excess wastewater through processes like using microorganisms. We're also converting old rock quarries into reservoirs that, when completed, will house 17.5 billion gallons of water. And so what was once a conveyor belt of garbage is today a beautiful amenity for people, ducks, and other wildlife. Chicagoans have some animals they are obsessed with that live in the river. And when you love an animal, you have to give it an adorable name. So we have Plumpton Sinclair and Ida Beeve Wells, two beavers who live in the river. We also have a giant snapping turtle called Chonkosaurus, who can only be compared to a dinosaur. There are over 60 species of fish in the river, well up from the handful that were there in the 80s. And later this month, actually, there will actually be a swimming race in the river. And so now you probably have to worry more about Chonkosaurus than the quality of our water. As we go down the river, we are going to be going under 25 bridges, 2 times each. And you can probably do that math even if you didn't study from a Montgomery Ward catalog. Most of our bridges are trunnion bascule bridges. Trunnion means pivot point and bascule means seesaw. They generally work by having a giant counterweight on one side, dropping down so the other side can lift open like a seesaw. The bridge in the upright position ahead of us is the Kinsey Railroad Bridge, but it wasn't the first bridge in that location. The first one was for the Galena and Chicago Union Railroad, that first railroad that we talked about earlier. This bridge remains in the upright position because it's no longer used due to rerouting. But one day out of the year, they do lower it and have a little truck drive across it that can drive on rails so that it can remain in active status. As we go by these bridges, first you'll want to look towards your right to see where that bridge touches down on the other side. It would be a tough limbo for this boat, which is why it's open 364 days a year. And then after, when we pass the Kinsey Railroad Bridge in that upright position, you want to look behind a little bit, and you'll actually see the counterweight that's used to open this bridge. It's a giant concrete block painted kind of yellow. This method is so successful that they only really need the motor of a small car to actually lift this bridge open because of that giant counterweight. Our bridges open about 40 times a year today, which is well down from the over 2,000 times they used to open. And if you're ever here on Bridge Lift Day, which is when we open our bridges to allow sailboats to come in and out from the lake during the spring and fall, you can go to the McCormick Bridge House Museum and see the giant gears turn that help open up these bridges. We're going to be entering the confluence of the river for the second time. This is where our river splits into 3 directions, creating a Y shape. That Y shape is a symbol often used throughout Chicago. You can have some fun playing a scavenger hunt, trying to pick it out. I'll give you the first one just off to our left. You'll see some Y shapes on the banisters. The confluence gives you some amazing views of Chicago. So I'm going to let you take some pictures and enjoy the beautiful views of the confluence. Also a classic Chicago picture with the trains running right by right now. Coming up on our right is going to be that building with the pointed bottom that kind of looks like a martini glass. This is 150 North Riverside, designed by Getch Partners and completed in 2017. Why would you ever build a building like that? Well, you only build a building like that if you have to, and they had to. It's constructed over active railroad tracks, and it needs that required river walk, so only 25% of the lot was actually buildable. For a long time, this lot was considered unbuildable. As we go by, you're going to want to look up in the angled glass to get a great view of the boat. This is a perfect time for a boat selfie. This lot is so small that they couldn't even put a crane there for construction. They actually had to float a 2 million pound crane over 81 barges in the river. And how does this building stand up? Well, it uses some of the strongest steel in North America to transfer the weight from those angled sides to a concrete core that goes into the earth. Coming up on our left is going to be a building with a jagged edge and some angled beams. That's Bank of America Tower, also designed by Getch Partners and completed in 2020. The lot for this building widens as it goes back, and so to take advantage of that additional space, they use that jagged edge. It also solves one of America's greatest tragedies: not enough corner offices for executives. This building is constructed over its riverwalk to take advantage of even more space. And they use those angled columns to get better views of the river from the riverwalk. James Getch once said that the way a skyscraper meets the ground is more important than how it meets the sky. And I don't think there's a better example of that than this building, because most of us interact with buildings from the ground. Now enter the cold part of the tour. Coming up on the left is going to be a tan building with what looks like to be a blank wall. This is the Civic Opera House, designed by Graham Anderson Probst and White and completed in 1929. If you look part way up, you'll see some masks of comedy and tragedy. And if you look all the way up, you'll see a back tower. It's actually an office tower. The idea was that renting office space above could help fund the performances happening below. And it was a very American idea because we didn't have government or royal patrons to fund the arts. It sounds like a good idea, but this building opened just 9 days before the stock market crashed. The office space went on lease, ticket sales plummeted, and the Civic Opera defaulted on their mortgage. But unlike many operas, this one actually has a happy ending. Today it's home to the Lyric Opera of Chicago, one of the most world-renowned opera companies. Coming up on our right, below street level, are going to be some trains and train tracks. If you didn't believe me that our city was built over tracks, there's the evidence. Trains and tracks were a blocker for development for a long time until the concept of air rights came along, basically leasing or selling the land above the tracks, and that opened up a lot of new opportunities for development. We've talked a lot about the postmodern style of architecture, which begs the question, what defines the modernist style that came before it? Luckily, on the right side of the river, we actually have some buildings that go in order chronologically. And so we'll first look at these black glass buildings that are emblematic of the modernist style. They're defined by the phrase, less is more. Let's strip away all of that historic ornamentation and let the structure and material of the building shine through. They are steel and glass, skin and bones, and they're designed for any purpose in any location. One of the most famous modern architects was Mies van der Rohe, who was director of the Bauhaus School in Germany. But the Nazis were not fans of modernist architecture. They thought it should express the nationalist culture instead of a universal design style. And so Mies was forced to leave Germany because no one wanted his architecture there, and he made Chicago his new home. These buildings are not designed by Mies, but they're heavily influenced by his style, and we'll see a Miesian building later in the tour. Inching forward in time a little bit, our next building is going to be the white building over to the right. Here, they're breaking that modernist mold just a little bit by covering the steel structure in white concrete, really highlighting the material of the building. Our next building on the right is going to be that low-lying black building with the X's on the sides. Here, they're really highlighting the structure of the building. They removed internal columns, instead put those X's, or called X bracing, on the outside to hold the building up. That was because this used to be a trading floor, and you wouldn't have wanted internal columns to block sight lines where people were yelling and screaming at each other trading stocks. Inching forward in time even more, we have that blue-green glass building coming up on our right. This is an early postmodern contextual building. Just like the next generation always does, they rejected the style that came before them. And they said, we don't want interchangeable glass boxes. We want architecture that's distinct, site-specific, and playful. And so here we have that blue-green glass reflecting the color of the river. It curves to match the shape of the river. And each individual glass panel, if you look closely, has pinched corners, creating a shimmering effect that matches the river's current. It also creates a funhouse sphere effect, which is kind of fun too. Coming up on our right is going to be a large tan building. This is the old post office designed by Graham Anderson, Probst & White and completed in 1921. Why did we need such a big post office? Well, those Montgomery Ward catalogs had to ship from somewhere, along with several other catalogs from mail order operations based in Chicago. It was also built for a different time, one where mail was painstakingly sorted by hand. This post office would process 35 million letters a day. And it's so large that there's actually a 6-lane highway running through the post office, which you can see on the bridge ahead of us. But what's really remarkable is the building actually predates the highway. The architects expected Chicago to continue to expand, and so they left a gap in the structure for a future thoroughfare. I think in order to really understand the highway, we got to take a listen. Meet you on the other side. Old in old post office should give you a hint that this is not our post office anymore. And you may think that email is what killed the